The supplies that I used for this project are a 6-inch Lazy Susan bearing, 8 32nd half-inch screws, you'll need 4 of these, 8 32nd cap nuts, you'll need 4 of these, 1/2 inch by 1 inch washers, you'll need 16 of these, so at least 2 packages, 6 32nd wing nuts, you'll need 4 of those, and mine were sold in a 6-pack, 6 32nd 1-inch screws, and you'll need at least 4 of those. You'll also need 6 32nd nuts, and you will need 8 of those. A large bucket with rope handles. I got mine at Walmart and it was roughly $8. Tools I used for this project are a hot knife, but you can also use a soldering iron with a knife tip. I also used tin snips, but you'll see that that's not really needed when you watch the video. A screwdriver with a Phillips head or cross head. A wrench. Mine is adjustable. A ratcheting wrench would have worked better. You need this to fit over your cap nuts and regular nuts. Other supplies that you'll need is aluminum ductwork tape and black heavy-duty duct tape if you want it to match. You can use a different color to match your bucket if you would like. First, I'm using a hot knife. Mine is a soldering tool with a hot knife blade, and I scored the bucket around the ring where I wanted to cut it. I should have had my temp turned up higher because I really struggled to cut through the bucket. But when I used the hot knife later for another project, I realized that it worked just fine if I had the temp turned up higher. Because I didn't have my temp up high enough, I was basically just scoring the bucket rather than actually cutting through it. And as a result, I decided that I would cut the bin apart along that score mark with my tin snips. This would not have been at all necessary had I just turned the temp up on my hot knife, but I honestly just didn't know at the time. To position the Lazy Susan bearing centered on the back, I found the center point of the bin and marked that, and then I also found the center of the Lazy Susan and I lined those up so that it was centered. I did this by measuring from the edge of the bucket to the corner of the Lazy Susan at all 4 corners. It wound up being about 2 inches away from the edge exactly. I marked those spots using a non-toxic crayon, which I swiped from one of my children ages ago, and then melted a hole for each screw. Next, I put a screw through the holes that will not attach to the bucket on the Lazy Susan and added 2 nuts on the opposite side. This will give some space between the wheel and the cage bars. I used a screwdriver and an adjustable wrench to tighten, but you can use other appropriate tools as well. The next step is to attach the bearing to the back of the bucket. So we're going to put a washer on our screw, push the washer and screw through the Lazy Susan bearing and through the hole, place another washer on the inside, and then we're going to add a cap nut and tighten with the same tools as before. The edge where I melted and cut the bucket was really rough, so I smoothed that out with my Dremel. This did take a little while and made a huge mess, but it was easily cleaned up. The bucket itself was a bit flexible, so I added metal duct work tape around the edge. This was pretty sharp once I cut it and placed it, so to protect Sweet Ratto feet, I covered this with a thick black duct tape. From here, I placed the bucket wheel inside the rat's cage and allowed them to explore it. I have discovered that I really need to oil this bearing. It's a little stiff. It's definitely not made to be hung. It's made to be sitting flat. So with that in mind, I do need to oil it. But I'm also considering removing that whole thing and trying a different mechanism on it to help it spin a little more smoothly. So stay tuned, one day I may do that.